Welcome to the Betancur Method podcast, where we explore mindset, leadership, and the systems that shape who we're becoming. Now, today's a very, very special episode. Of course, for the first one, we had to have somebody very, very special. She is probably, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the most beautiful, the most talented, the greatest woman to walk this earth, and that is my beautiful wife, Juliette Betancur. My question to you is, what do you think has been one of the biggest mindset changes that you've for us to have a successful marriage?
Oh man, whatever you believe, I do think our superpower as wives is prayer. I think that's a big, big fundamental part of just really being submissive, not the scary word submission that the world has taught us to be afraid of, but submission because you respect your spouse and you know that your spouse has the best in mind for the marriage,
Now,
right?
with that word submission, that's kind of a weird word
Uh-huh.
nowadays. Now, do women really want to be led though?
I do think so. I think even the most intimidating women um, want to be led, but it takes a very uh, grounded man to be able to lead a strong, powerful woman. I do think that in terms of the mindset change, I definitely had to trust in you. I had to trust in
Mm-hmm.
God, and I had to believe that everything's going to be okay at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
yeah,
Like nothing is so important that I should jeopardize our marriage.
yeah. No, I love that. I love that, and that's interesting that you say that because I think men don't really know how to lead nowadays, and that was one of the things where I was really passionate about learning, and that's why I surrounded myself with so many different guys and so many different people that were able to teach me how to do that, how to really lead, because it's very different than what a lot of people may think. I think there's this stigma of this like masculinity, and you gotta be this macho type to be able to lead a woman, a strong woman at that, and it goes a long way. And I think again nowadays men need to learn how to lead in a great way. I mean, regardless if if you're in faith, regardless if you believe in God, but there has to be a sense of characteristics in a man that's able to lead a woman in a great way. Absolutely. So now, with that same note, I think I've seen a lot of different men nowadays be very soft. And not in like a wimpy sort of way or like small sort of way. I mean, I've seen a lot of different men really lead in a great way. But how do you think women have unintentionally contributed to men being soft nowadays?
I think, this is a very controversial perspective or mindset. I think with how everything is going, the direction, even our administration or just the world in general, there is a big push for women to be self sufficient in all ways, to be able to do everything ourselves. And I've tried that and it doesn't work,
Yeah.
to work the 9 to 5, to take care of the kids. And then when you're done taking care of the kids, to clean the house. And when you're done cleaning the house, taking care of all the manly tasks.
So you believe in a traditional marriage?
I do. And I think that the traditional roles are necessary because we have superpowers that align with those roles. When they say moms could be more nurturing than dads, it's not that dads don't have a nurturing characteristic in them. It's just a matter of just what God created you to do. And so it comes more easily sometimes to some women,
Yeah.
and sometimes it doesn't.
I
So I
hear you.
do.
Now, the difference sometimes nowadays, especially how I guess the world is gone. There's some men nowadays that one are wanting to stay home, and two, maybe the wife is the breadwinner. Um, and how do you go about that? Like whenever the woman's kind of the one that maybe is making a little bit more money, maybe is um, has the career, and then maybe the man has to stay home and take care of the baby and dogs and cleaning the house and laundry and dishes, because that doesn't really seem too traditional, if you will.
Yeah. I think that in terms of being traditional, I think the wife or mom being home and taking care of the kids is what is considered the traditional approach. I do not think that that eliminates the dad from being at home or having time with the children. I do think that there is something that happens when the children do grow up predominantly with dad versus when they grow up with mom, right? And just this is something I've been actually reading into and looking into because I did want to find out the answer for myself. And one of the I was listening to another interview, and hopefully you could put the information in the comment box or whatever the case is. But I was listening to another interview where it approaches how the raising or the upbringing of children can lead to ADHD, and the importance of a nurturing environment coming from mom is different from the dad nurturing the child. It's two different things. Even though it can be done by dads, it's very different when mom does it. And the child benefits from having mom in the home at an early stage, especially between the ages of 1 to 3 years old, when they're learning how to just develop sense of self, at that age. And I think that's important when it comes to a traditional marriage. I think it is important. And the roles do change, but I think the needs don't change. Like the child's still gonna need to be able to latch on to someone to help it in its earliest stages between ages.
Well, so how do you make that work then? Because if the dad's at home and mom's working the 9 to 5, and maybe the baby's still really young and still has to get breastfed, still has to do this and that, like, how do you make that work where the mom and the baby can still have that type of relationship?
Yeah, I've seen different moms try ample number of ways of making that work, especially in my field, in the legal field. Moms have to do it every day. I've seen moms take a reduction in their hours. I've seen moms set up specific times where it's just mommy and me. It's them and the baby, right? I've seen moms emphasize skin to skin or other ways of interacting with the child. Maybe that mom would, if they're foregoing breastfeeding, they're probably going to prioritize special time with the kid or prioritizing skin to skin or just building more moments out of the times that they have. Now, don't get me wrong. I do understand that not every mom can stay home and be with their child. That's the reality of a lot of people's situations. But I do think they find a way just to make it work.
Yeah. And I love that because I think that plays really well with the whole topic in general that we're talking about, having a successful relationship is if both parties, if the man and the woman are able to be on the same page, the whole household will be taken care of. I mean, regardless of what's going on, regardless if the wife is out at a job and the dad has to stay home. And I think some of that also has to do with maybe a little bit of pride on the men's part. I think there's some men that are not willing to do that. And then it kind of damages the relationship a little bit because they have this thing and the stigma in their minds that I got to be the one working. I got to be the one doing this and that. And I've seen certain relationship where the man is still very like, hey, that's what I want, and doesn't allow the woman to kind of spread her wings or be successful. And I hope that's something that we've been able to try to communicate very well with. Because to be honest, I've told you before, I mean, I wouldn't mind having a sugar mama. I wouldn't mind staying at home for a little bit and having my wife take care of me because I still am very secure in who I am as a man. And I think a lot of men need to learn how to be that way. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to work hard. That doesn't mean I don't have other ventures that I want to go after. I think that just means that I know that there's a singular goal for the family. And if we're both on the same page of how to get there, then we're going to have a very successful relationship.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, like for our situation, I know that you had the luxury of being home on paternity leave for almost 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
And I still had to go back into the hustle and bustle. And even if I was working full time, I think because, like you said, we had a singular vision, now when the tables switch, we were able to accommodate appropriately without there having to be any pulling of the hearts or having
Yeah.
to switch too many things. And so I think that communication is very important when it comes to a marriage. And I think that
Definitely agree.
if there's a singular vision, the couple could overcome anything, to be
Absolutely. And it
honest.
was kind of on that paternal leave, it was kind of weird for me because I'm kind of stepping into a role where I thought you were gonna be a lot more there, and because of your job situation, I kind of
Yeah.
had to be the mom a couple times, and
Yeah.
to be honest, I almost lost my mind sometimes. I almost lost my mind because I'm dealing with a crying baby and still trying
Yeah.
to figure life out and all these different things. Like it was hard.
Yeah.
So like shout out to all the moms who staying at home, all the dads who are staying at home because it's not an
Yeah.
easy job.
Yeah.
It's not an easy job at all. And what's cool is that what we talked about earlier is that um, both have a man and a woman supposed to have like a certain role and a certain job. Now, I've also seen nowadays that sometimes a lot of bad relationships end up with the woman saying that, "Hey, this was a toxic relationship. This was a toxic man, X, Y, and Z," and they end up getting hurt by it. Now, the thing is, do you think that when women call these relationships toxic, do you think it's just because they don't like authority?
That's a loaded question just because there's so many different factors that kind of go into what one would call a toxic relationship. If we were to kind of skim it down, like getting rid of all the fat and just sticking to the bones and the muscles, right? If we would have, in this context, just thinking of parenthood, marriage, and the toxicity that can happen. I think that sometimes when it comes to being led and playing roles, that it's so important that the couple identify what their foundation is, because if your foundation is grounded in something outside of just each other, then I think you'll be able to find a neutral ground that you can build on. I do think, what standards are you talking about? You know, like if you're talking about the world standard and now versus like the 1990s, those standards have shifted
Yeah, they look different.
tremendously, right? If you're talking about the 1990s versus the 1980s, those standards have shifted tremendously. And so I think when it comes to trauma or just toxicity, like it does matter the context in which we use
Yeah,
those words, you know?
yeah. No, I totally get that. And what's cool is that kind of has me thinking about like all these shows nowadays,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's a lot of shows on Netflix and Hulu and all these great shows that are just so surrounded by drama. So all these dating shows, all the love shows, and this and that. How do you think that impacts like the way people view relationships nowadays?
I think we've created a society where it's very much just like fast food. Like, you know, even if you pay attention to the shows, the love shows or the speed dating shows, or there's so many different different ways that different ways in which, you know, love is being introduced to people. You know, some people want fast connections, 30 seconds first impression type things, and some
Yeah.
people want more lasting, you know, more longevity when they're
Yeah.
trying to build that connection.
So do you think these shows actually work? Like, do they end up getting married and having a great life and X, Y,
I
and
don't
Z?
know. I don't know, to be honest. Like sometimes some of the shows that I see, I do see people who do come from these shows and they have great marriages and they overcome the hurdles, they overcome the difficulties that come with being married, right? And they are still together till this day. And then you see the disaster on the other side,
Yeah.
right? You see how people are hurting people or taking advantage of people, and you don't see successful relationships. So I think it really just depends on the couple, whether it works or not.
Yeah. So is love at first sight real then?
I don't know. I think it depends on who you ask.
Who you ask?
Yes, because I think I know for you, when you tell our story, you say you knew from the moment that you met me
Yeah.
that you were in love,
I
right?
did.
But for me, it wasn't that, right? And I think that it also, you have to take into account like what a person's journey has been, right? I don't know when it comes to that. I do think it's subjective in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get that. And what's cool is that we do get to have different perspectives and different ways on like how we were attracted to each other and fell in love. I know I tell you all the time, but I think I knew from the jump, at least from our first date, I'm like, hey, this is the woman. This is the woman for me. And I say that because there was just a lot of things, not just a feeling, but there was just this connection and the connection mixed with all these other attributes where it just aligned with what I wanted in a woman. And I think what's interesting, that's one of the things where men don't realize, like, they don't really know what they want.
That's true.
I think women as well. And one thing that I've told a lot of these young guys that we mentor is that, I mean, you got to be very aware of what you want. Yeah. Not necessarily specific, like so specific that like if they're not like have all the attributes or if they're not
like
this
a
type
checklist.
of way. Yeah, if the checklist don't check, then that's not the woman for me. I don't think that's it at all. But you do have to have a vision and some type of dream of like, what do you want?
Yeah.
You know, and I think what's awesome is that when we talked, like I knew that we had very similar dreams of having like the homestead life and having animals and having all this, you know, all these different things, which contributed to me falling in love with you.
Yeah.
Now, how did you know you were in love when you fell in love and not just like an attraction?
I think that, of course, emotions play a big part, right? And I think that for me, I was in a different stage in life, just in general. I think where you're at in life does play a big factor. I had dated before you and I knew what I didn't want. I knew what I didn't want, right? And I also had taken about 6 years to be single and to understand who I am, to go to therapy, to get to know who I am as, you know, as a young woman, and to just get to know what I was looking for, what would compliment me. Now, some people don't have the luxury to do that, but I do think it's important for anyone who's looking to be in a serious relationship to really take the time to get to know themselves. I knew it was love because I could tell there were many weaknesses that I had that you complimented. And I knew just based on the foundation of my faith and those around me who I trusted, other women, just asking advice as to like what would be attributes of a great spouse. Yeah. And I feel like, not to say you checked all the boxes, but I did see that it was more than just potential. You actually were a man of action. And when you said you were going to do something, you did it. And I think for me, because I knew myself well enough and I knew what I didn't want and I knew what I needed to be the best version of myself, it was a no-brainer. Like, it was very easy to figure out. Like, okay. You know, he might be the one.
Baby, you did that. You did that. And I say that what's cool is I think another attribute that I talk about a lot is this concept. These two words that I like to mix together is humble confidence.
Yes.
And what's cool about that is being able to have like not this fake humility, and where it's like, oh, you know, I'm lowly, I'm cool, whatever. But having this depth of humility to like be taught. I think that's one of the things that really helped me be who I needed to be. Is being taught by men and not having this sense of pride, like, hey, I already know. You know, I've arrived. Yeah. That doesn't go nowhere. But also having a sense of confidence in, you know what, like, I can do this. I think some men are either on one way or the other, where they're way too humble and they're just like meek. And then a strong woman comes by and it just kind of tramples over him. Or maybe they're more on the other side where they just get a little too confident or cocky. And women don't like that. Yeah. Women don't like that. Have you seen the difference?
Yeah, I think if we're talking about the two extremes, when it comes to men who are, I knew from the moment I decided that, okay, I may be ready to date again, that whoever came around would have to be someone who can deal with my tough exterior just because of the past relationships I had. And quite frankly, I wasn't intentionally just putting on a strong face, I just knew that I had learned from a lot of my mistakes, right? And I had taken accountability from a lot of the mistakes that I made or the decisions that I made, that I knew whoever was going to come into my sphere, so to say, had to be someone who was sure of self, right? And sometimes when a man is a little bit too humble, it presents itself as insecurity. And so it's hard to, even though, as I said, my decision was based on my faith. So God calls us to submit, but you got to give us something to submit to. Like it's really hard to want to confidently follow a man if he is presenting himself as insecure or weak, right?
Now, does that mean that if a man does have certain insecurities, that means that that's not the guy?
No, I think everybody has insecurities. Like even on the opposite end, sometimes those who are the most insecure presents themselves as very prideful, right? And I don't think that if you have, in fact, I think if you're able to communicate those insecurities, to embrace those insecurities, and to share those insecurities with your significant other, you could build a very strong relationship on that. In fact, I've seen some of the best marriages I've seen from the outside. Obviously, I'm not in their relationships. I've seen two people who are very honest about where they're at in life, and they accept each other for their strengths and their weaknesses, So I do think that in all, that either extremes, whether it's super meek, super too humble, right? If that is a thing, right? Or super prideful on the other end, I think there has to be a balance, because a woman wouldn't know where she fits in, when it comes to that kind of personality. And then if you're both, some people are both, it's just like they don't know what they're doing, It's scary because we're called to submit and to follow. We don't want to follow chaos and destruction,
That's awesome, and I love that. And I think for all the men that are looking for a very strong, powerful woman, I think they have to understand a lot of those things that we talked about, and understand that it does take a lot of humility, but it does take you being confident to know who you are. And I think that's the other thing, and that's a whole nother podcast in itself about identity, about knowing who you are, knowing who you want to be, like having a certain picture. Because to be honest with you, when you met me, I wasn't this.
Right.
I was in this. So how were you able to kind of look past that and be like, you know what, this could potentially be somebody that I can marry?
Yeah. I think for me, I was also already on this journey where I was learning about myself, where I was asking my closest friends, like, what are some of the things I can work on, right? And so I was already working on a few things myself. And so I gave you a lot of grace. Not that I didn't fall in love with the potential AJ. I still had my standard as to what I was looking for in exchange. Like, I know for a fact, like I had my little list of attributes that I had.
Hey, shout out Evita and all the rest of the women, man. I remember seeing that. Yo, y'all awesome. I appreciate y'all.
I had my list of attributes that I was looking for that I knew complimented me. And I wasn't looking for you to fill all the boxes, but I knew, like, okay, whatever characteristics which had shown themselves at the time when we were dating, someone said something very important that I hold on to now is, if you never changed those attributes, would I still be happy married to you if you never changed? Yeah. And because of the integrity and the characteristics that you had, I found myself saying, okay, even if he didn't change these smallest of things, I would still be happy.